Hello everybody, and welcome to a video looking at Team Sonic Racing, the latest kart racer to land on our consoles. This one is available on just about every platform, I believe. It's on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and I'm pretty sure it's on PC as well, so whatever you play, you can play this one. And it is, I think, the third, perhaps the fourth in the series. I've lost count, to be honest, but it is a growing series from Sega, which quite blatantly tries to compete with Nintendo and its Mario Kart franchise, and why not, given how successful Mario Kart has been for Nintendo over the years. So I've been playing this one. I'm not the one who's going to review it for digitallydownloaded.net. That's another guy, Brad. His review should be up probably sometime next week, I imagine. So this is just my own impressions from my time with the video, and I'm not going to preempt what Brad will say. He may well love this game, but if I'm being honest, I don't like this one all that much at all, to be honest, it's disappointing because I was looking forward to it, and it doesn't do anything wrong as such. I find it disappointing because it doesn't do anything particularly exciting either. It's actually quite a by-the-numbers kart racer, which is not really what I expected. I have actually quite enjoyed some of the previous Sega kart races. This one feels like it may have been put together quickly or on a smaller budget. Perhaps the developer had their time split between a couple of different projects, but it's not up to the standards I expected, and it's certainly not the Mario Kart beta that I'm sure Sega would like this series to become. Now, when I say that I'm not particularly a fan of it, I do think it plays well, and the game is structured nicely, and it does everything that a kart racer really should do. The racing, the driving itself feels quite nice. It's got there's plenty of opportunities to become quite skilled at this game because there are the power slides to deal with. There is plenty of obstacles on the tracks to try and avoid, and there is plenty. I mean, the tracks themselves are quite lengthy and sustained, and you do need to be concentrating throughout the entire track in order to really get the performance you need to, especially on the higher difficulty levels. You will get quite badly beaten if you're not on your game through the entire track time. So on all of that account, on the kind of the basics of kart racing, on the mechanical side of things, Sonic Team Racing does get things right. It also has one particularly neat feature which I think is done well enough. It was an exciting feature in the lead up to the game's release, and I think it's just enough to justify its existence in the game. And that is the fact that you're actually racing teams in this one. So there are 3 racers per team, and those racers actually need to work together in order to get the best results. So as you would have seen on the screen, if you get behind one of your teammates' kind of zip lines, which is the 2 kind of golden trails that extend out past whichever person on the team is kind of coming first at the moment, if you get behind one of those, you can get a big speed boost, which is great. It allows the person who's taking the lead in the race to help the other players get to the top. You can also share items, which I think is a nice touch. So if you pick up an item that's not particularly useful to you, you can pass it on to somebody who's behind you perhaps, and they can use it to get a boost up to the front. And if you do all this teamwork stuff well, you also get a zip, a special invincibility boost. It builds up over the course of a track. If you do really well, you might get to use it twice within a single race. So there's plenty of incentives to play well as part of a team, which I think is a nice touch, and I think that is something that the developers tried to do a little bit differently to Mario Kart. Mario Kart is a much more individual kind of racer, so I think that was the right idea. Unfortunately, pretty much the rest of the game lets that down, and it's never quite executed to the extent that it needed to be a really compelling racing game. See, the main problem with Team Sonic Racing is that for everything it seems to do well, it feels like it's been held back by being so limited in scope and so limited in ambition. So the first and most obvious example of that is the rosters. This game's roster comes purely from the Sonic series, and I think there's about 12 characters or so to choose from. Whereas previous Sonic racing games have brought in characters from other franchises, including weird ones like Football Manager. The actual Football Manager, it was a racing character in one of these previous Sega racing games, and that was to the benefit of the game. There's a reason that even Mario Kart has extended out into additional franchises, and you can play as Link or the Animal Crossing characters or whatever. There's a reason that Smash Brothers is so successful, because it pulls in characters from so many different franchises. So it doesn't matter what you're personally a fan of, what you like to play as is kind of represented in there. And it's a real pity, because Sega has such a vibrant range of IP and so many different characters. If they were to even tap into the Atlas stuff, because Sega obviously owns Atlas, you could have Persona characters in there, you could have Space Channel 9 characters coming back, because they've got a Space Channel 9 game coming out. You'd think they'd want to promote that by having the character Ulala in their game, but they don't. It's all purely Sonic, and I don't know if that was just a lack of ambition or there was some kind of core reason to pull back on previous Sonic games to make that happen, but it feels like it's a step back for the series. And as somebody who's not a massive fan of Sonic, I was able to really enjoy the previous ones because I had other choices for characters anyway, and it felt less of a Sonic game. This one feels like a Sonic game, which is disappointing. That lack of ambition with the roster also kind of flows onto the tracks, which are designed well enough from a purely mechanical racing point of view, and I've certainly got no issues with the way that they wind and loop around and how they keep you quite busy throughout the entire race. But the actual theming of those tracks is really quite dull, to the point where I didn't really recognise any of them. A lot of them seemed generic to me. And I'm sure that they do come from Sonic games somewhere. Once again, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Sonic, so I have missed a fair few games, especially in the recent era. But that's kind of the point. If I need to have played every Sonic game to recognise these tracks, then those tracks are probably a little bit too obscure for their own good. If you compare to, again, Mario Kart has all these great tracks that are just fun designed and colourful and bright, and they're immediately distinctive and original, and they have their own character, and you just pay attention to them. You have your own favourite tracks, even if you're not necessarily familiar with whatever part of Mario Kart they come from. If they come from a part of Mario Kart at all, a lot of them are actually original designs as well. But in this one, the tracks are the theming of the tracks is quite dull, quite uninteresting. They're busy, there's a lot of colour and there's a lot of background stuff going on, but I can't think of a single track, even now as I'm watching this video and recording my voice track. I can't think of a single track which really stuck out in my head. I kind of like the desert one, I think, but the desert one in Mario Kart was still much more interesting, to the point where I can probably muscle memory my way through that track now. So again, there's just nothing that's really inspiring me to keep playing on with this particular Sonic Team Sonic Racing. The items too are really boring. Really boring. They're the sprites, which are characters again from the Sonic universe, which is fine enough, but And they all have the roles which basically emulate what you had in every other kart racer. So there's the projectile weapons, there's the blocks that you drop behind you which basically act like banana peels, there's the speed boost, there's bombs. So every item that you would expect to see in a kart racer is there. But there's nothing really kind of bright and colourful about them. There's nothing distinctive about them. There's no character. You get hit by a shell in Mario Kart, and it's just fundamentally good fun. I remember when I was at the VR arcade in Tokyo, and well, I went twice in the end. And each time, the first thing I did was beeline to the Mario Kart VR arcade machine, and every time the lineup was people, and they were having the most fun, physically reaching up to grab the shell to throw at their mates and stuff. That's kind of iconic item design for a kart racer. And this game doesn't have that. It's just not that much fun to throw a squid missile thing at somebody. It just doesn't have that same appeal to it. It doesn't have that same feeling to it. And that might be because this is a less well-known kart racing series compared to Mario Kart, but they are 3 or 4 or however many titles in now. They've had time to start to develop some kind of personality with Sonic racing games, and they still haven't quite got there. And that's an X Factor thing. There's nothing kind of you can sit there and point at and say, this is where it's kind of gone wrong, but it has gone wrong. And once again, the first couple of times you're willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. By the time you get to the 3rd or 4th time, you're kind of wondering when the developers are going to really start to do something that is, it's kind of competitive enough with Mario Kart. Now, I do like my kart racing games, of course, and I've done videos on kart races that are very much B tier on this channel. You can see a video of Meow Motors if you go looking for it, which also just recently released on Nintendo Switch, by the way. I've also done positive reviews on digitallydownloaded.net for kart races like the Hello Kitty Cruises one, which was... And those games are quite clearly inferior in terms of their racing quality compared to this one. This one, as I said at the start of the video and have said a couple of times, mechanically it's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the mechanics of how this game works. But then this is so much of a higher profile game made with a much higher budget than those kinds of B-tier kart races. So I'm less inclined to be forgiving of it, and I do have greater expectations for it. And to be honest, this game only kind of getting a team-based kart racing experience kind of sort of good with some sort of workable tracks and some items that do what they need to do. It's just not that inspiring, and that makes it one of the bigger disappointments for me for this year, unfortunately. Again, I don't know if Brad, when he gets his review up on digitallydownloaded.net, is going to love the game or not. He may well. And if so, then that's great. And I'm sure there are people out there that will enjoy it. But for me, I came in expecting more, and I think that this is actually a step back for what was a kart racing series with a lot of potential. Anyway, that's probably going to earn me a lot of dislikes, but I have to say what I have to say. I hope you enjoy this video. I hope if you do like Sonic Racing, you do love this game. I would hate for people to really look forward to it as Sonic fans and then be disappointed. If you do enjoy it, then great, and I hope it gives you plenty of years of enjoyment. Otherwise, I guess we'll look forward to the next kart race or whatever that might be. There's a Crash one coming, isn't there? Yeah. So Activision has a Crash kart racing game coming, and I have had a chance to play all of one track of that in the previous session. I think that one has a lot of potential, so that will be something worth looking forward to. Otherwise, thanks very much for tuning in, and we will see you at the next video.